Alright guys, now that we have the table turned over, the only thing left to do are add the seat boards as well as the tabletop boards. Now the seat boards, I'll get the measurements for you when we move over to the table saw, but they've got a 22.5-degree bevel cut on those. The tabletop boards, you're going to have your outside boards that have 45-degree cuts on each end, then straight cuts on your center boards. Let's go inside of the table saw, get those cut. We'll get this installed and we'll call it a done day. Alright, we're going to start off with cutting the tabletop boards. Now, on the tabletop boards, there's going to be some spacing in between them, but on the outside boards, the outside rim boards, you want those flush or tight up against the edge of your table, the inside of your table. Now, the outside boards are 28.5 inches and both have 45 degrees on each end. Now, the 28.5 inches is an oversized measurement. What you want to do is you want to trim away until you have that perfect fit. Once you have the perfect fit, then you're going to actually measure in between your two outside boards. You're going to divide that number by 6, and that'll tell you the spacing that you need between the remaining boards to have, full coverage. So what I've done here is I went ahead and I've cut my board down to its 28.5 inches. I've got my 45s at both ends, and now I'm just test fitting it to make sure I have a nice fit and slowly trimming away until it is where it needs to sit up against the edge of the table. When I get done with that, I'll do the same thing with the other one, and then we'll work on the inside boards. Alright, so now that we have our outside boards fitted just right where we want them, what we want to do next is we want to measure the distance between those two boards. For me, I have 29.25. Now that 29.25, what we want to do is we want to take the 5 remaining boards at 5.5 inches and we want to add those together, and that gives us a total of 27.5 inches. We're going to take that 27.5, subtract it from the 29.25 space that we have, and that'll give us a measurement of 1.75, 1.75 inches. Now we want to take that 1.75 inches and divide by 6, and that'll tell us the spacing that we need between the rest of our boards. That gives me just a little over 1/4 inch spacing in between. It's at 0.29. So that's what I need to make. I need to plane some spacers down to go in between my boards at 0.29 of an inch, and I'll have the perfect measurements. Alright guys, went ahead and cut the spacers down. My spacers ended up being just a tad bit over 1/4 inch. I went ahead and cut 2 spacers even though the plan called for several. What we got to do now is we got to cut our inside boards. We've already got the outside boards in place. The next boards measure 39 15/16. And again, this measurement is long. We're going to sneak up on the final cuts, but we're going to go ahead and I'm going to trim it down 39 15/16, and it's got 45 degrees at both ends. Alright, so it's right about here that I lost the footage of cutting those adjacent, outside boards to their 39 15/16 length. What you see here is I'm going ahead and cutting the center boards down to their length, and their rough measurement is 40.5 inches in length, and again, that measurement is long. We're going to sneak up on the cut, to the final dimensions. So we're going to start off and we're going to cut it down to the 40.5 inches, and then we'll go out to the table, set them in place and see exactly what we need to trim off and just sneak up on that cut. Alright, so with the top boards in, they're not secured yet, but while they're in, I was able to go through, take my spacers, make sure that my spacing is accurate all the way across, and now from the bottom side up, I want to screw and secure them into place using 2.5 inch exterior screws. So I'm going to go ahead and pre-drill, get those attached. To attach them, I'm going to attach the 2 outside boards first, get my shims into place, attach the next 2, and so on and so forth till I get to the center. Now if there's any trimming required to get the appropriate space in between, I'll be trimming just the one center board, so that'll work out just fine. Alright, with all the top boards secured into place, now we can finish it up by putting the seat boards on. So we'll move in the shop, I'll give you the measurements of the seat boards, we'll get those cut, and we'll get them put on. On the top, I'm going to go ahead and belt sand the top just to kind of sand it off, and I'm going to take these sharp edges of the table, I'll round those over with a small 1/4 inch round over bit, and I'll do the same thing for the seat bases. In the center of the table, if you wanted to, you could drill a hole for an umbrella stand and it'd go right through the center of both of the frames. I'm not going to put an umbrella stand in mine because I do have an umbrella, but it mounts a little differently. So what I did do is I went ahead and secured the center of the boards to the frame underneath from the top down using the 2.5 inch screws. And those screw holes, I went ahead and countersunk them, and I can plug those or just fill them in. Alright, let's go inside. Alright, both the inside and the outside seat boards, each of those have a 22.5-degree angle cut on one end, while the other end is a straight cut. What you see here is I have the seat boards, the angles already cut on one end, and now I've set up a stop block and I'm cutting them down to their final lengths. The outside seat boards are going to be cut to a length of 26 inches, while the inside seat boards, they'll be cut to a length of 23 5/8 inches. Alright, so now that we have the seat boards cut, we want to go ahead and get them in place. We're going to be using the same spacers that we use to space the boards for the top of the table. We want that same spacing in between the seat boards. Now, the placement for the seat boards, I was trying to figure out exactly where to place these or how to make sure that they were aligned correctly. I know that when the joint comes together, the long point, I want that in the center of these two 2x4 runners here. But in order to make sure that I don't pivot or anything, I went ahead and made a small little jig. In this jig, I cut two 22.5-degree bevels on one end, and on the other end I made a notch so it would wrap around this table leg here. Now the distance between that notch and the point of the angle is about 2 3/8, and that's the spacing that I want my front boards to start at. So I'll be able to take this jig, and it's got sort of the same contour, about a 30-degree angle on the bottom side, so when it wraps around that table leg it'll hold it in position. And then I can take my front seat boards and get them into position, and that'll tell me where I need to screw my front boards. Then I'll take my spacer and then we'll install the back boards. And I'm going to be using glue and 2.5 inch screws. You want to countersink your screws if you're planning on plugging the holes. If not, just recess the head of the screws slightly, and then you can fill them in as you're doing your finishing and everything. So what we'll do is we'll get a little closer. I'll show you this setup here. We'll get these boards attached, and then once we get this seat done, we'll just repeat the same steps for the other three. Alright, so now I can just simply take my small jig, I can slide it around that 2x6 and clamp it into place. I can just take a small clamp, clamp it into place so it won't move, and now I can take my seat boards, get those into position. I can go ahead and glue and screw those, and now I'll be able to take my spacers and put them in between and get my second boards up, and I'll have the perfect alignment all the way around the table. So we'll go ahead and get some glue on. I'm going to be generous with the glue. Go ahead and get the first board into position. Okay. And now I can take a clamp while I'm screwing. I can clamp that into position. Do that on both sides actually. So we'll go ahead and get this one up. All right, so now I just want to go ahead and pre-drill and screw, and you're going to put 2 in each seat, in each area. All right, so now with the first seat attached, we can just simply go ahead and repeat the steps for the other 3. As far as the finish on the table, I don't plan on doing any finishing. That's why I use pressure treated wood. So once I get the 3 seats done, all I'm going to do is give it a really thorough sanding. Make sure that everything is nice and flush and you know, smooth. And then I'm going to take the edges of the table plus the edge of my seat boards. I'm going to round them over with a 1/2 inch round over bit. Other than that, this project is called done. So let's get the other 3 seats done, and then we'll get it set up where it needs to be for its final destination. Alright, as I said, I'm going to just wrap up this video by sanding down the table and rounding off all of the edges. I don't think I need to film that. You guys know what sanding's all about. This is pressure treated lumber, and as I said, I don't plan on putting a finish on it, but I'll decide that a little bit later. Right now I don't think I'm going to. As I said in the beginning of the video, this was not my plan or my design. This was a plan out of Woodcraft Magazine's issue 10, and the article was by Bill Sands, and I'd like to thank Bill Sands for putting together such a great plan in an article, because I've always wanted an octagon table, and I've never really found a design or you know, had really good instruction on one, and Bill did a great job of laying this out. I'd also like to thank Kevin Wright for coming over and giving me a hand with the heavy part, lifting the table and getting it all set up and flipped over and everything. I do recommend that you guys, you know, when you get to a certain stage, if you plan on building a table like this, go ahead and get a helper, you know, to help you with the heavy stuff. In the description of this video, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the cut list for you, so you have the parts and everything. And as I said, the plan came out of Woodcraft Magazine's issue 10, and I don't know if this issue is available anywhere or anything. You might be able to go to woodcraft.com and see if you can get a hold of it if you want the plan. But all in all, it ended up taking me 17 2x6 by 8 boards and 7 2x4 by 8 boards for the table. I'm really happy with it. Looking forward to getting it finished off, you know, sanding everything and getting it over on my patio. I really appreciate you sticking with me, and if you enjoyed this video build, please subscribe to my channel. And as always, guys, until next time, see you soon.